I don't know that AI is going to be able to answer a phone call from a borrower at 10 at night who's confiding in you that their seller is using a business broker who's really a residential realtor who happens to work with the seller's wife, and the attorney involved is a family divorce attorney that lives in a cul-de-sac. Nobody's organized. Nobody's ready. How are we going to navigate through this?
I feel like I look very curvy from this angle. Emily, what do you think?
I think you need to not skip arm day at the gym.
You need some Spanx.
And he quits the show and never came back.
You take the punch as well.
Man, join the Steve Hoshak plan.
Hoshak, holler at me.
Hey, I did it for 3 days, and look at me.
I noticed.
All right. Well, I want to welcome everybody to the BDO Show. This is a podcast for passionate BDOs wanting to level up their game with advice and stories from battle-tested BDOs. I'm your co-host, Emily Detour, and I will be here with my fellow co-hosts for the entire show, Alan Peterson, Chris Hackney, and Sterling Birdsong. A quick reminder before we start, I will do this at the beginning of every show. It's very important that you guys hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions for us or topics you'd like to see discussed on the show, shoot us a quick email at thebdoshow@gmail.com. BDOs. Have you ever had a borrower bring in like a brother-in-law to do their life insurance? Doesn't end well, does it? We've all been there. When you require life insurance on your SBA loan, it's critical that you bring in a company that specializes in getting these policies in place for the SBA loans. The last thing you want is for life insurance to be the holdup. We all know that's a rookie mistake. SBA Protection Quick Close Life Insurance is the fastest, easiest way to secure the insurance protection that your borrower needs for their SBA loan. Their process is simple, hassle-free, and only takes a few minutes of your borrower's time. No lengthy paperwork, no complicated forms. They even have programs that don't require labs or doctor records for approval. And best of all, you will have the collateral assignment back in less than 24 hours. It's a no-brainer. Go to sbaprotection.com for more information or email Adam Bergen at adam@sbaprotection.com. So again, thank you for being with us. Today, we're going to be discussing if BDOs can possibly be replaced by AI technology. We all know that AI in the past few years has been a really hot topic. Apps like ChatGPT have made it readily available to the masses, bringing the power directly to your fingerprints. It's new, it's cool, it's fun. However, there is a concern that this technology could potentially harm us in the future. Not necessarily in terms of anything like you've seen on a sci-fi movie or scary movies, but in terms of our jobs. Will AI make certain jobs redundant? So today I pose a question to the group. Can AI replace a loan officer? Why don't we kick this question off with Chris? What are your thoughts on AI?
Whoa. Coming into this episode, do I really say how I feel, right? Because we all know I'm not a BDO, but somehow I'm Ray's friend and I'm on the show. But
he's paying you.
Do I really say how I feel? Become like the enemy of the state, or do I just go with the flow and say, of course, you need a loan officer?
I was going to say, do you think it could undeniably be better than a human loan officer? Let's get into some questions here. Let's start.
Undeniably, no. More cost effective, yes. When you look at compensation and where it's headed for a BDO compared to where their premium market is right now in present day, it would definitely make sense if you could add in a mixture of some AI generated loans with a BDO. I think you definitely need human touch. You need relationships. You need a Sterling, you need an Alan to talk to the borrower, coach them, help them with structuring. That I don't think will ever be able to be totally replaced. But there is a point where small working capital loan, small biz act loan, we're talking 500,000 or less, right? I'm just a buyer. I don't have any relationships. I go online, I find a lender. They walk me through the process all virtually. And at the end, you have a chat bot or something like that can reach out to you. I think there's a path for that. And, groundbreaking news here at my bank, we had our first AI submitted referral. So we partnered with an AI company that is a loan officer for us. It was a $400,000 landscaping acquisition deal. It was totally crap. So I don't know if we'll be able to do it. It's marginal.
See, a BDO would have caught that.
What's that?
See, a BDO might have caught that, though.
So here's the thing. With the AI referral, you still have to have human involvement. So we actually have a BDO as an intermediary before it comes into the underwriting queue right now, because I felt I didn't want the deals coming straight from this AI generated system into underwriting, kind of wasting an underwriter's time and not going through our process that we have established here at BayFirst. So there's still some human interaction. So I don't think we're ready for BDOs to be totally replaced right now, but I would say 10 years from now, you have a segment of certain types of deals that are BDO facilitated and the rest are all AI. Like a $2 or $3 million business acquisition deal, you got to call Alan Peterson. You got to call Sterling Birdsong. Anything less than that, it's not complex. You can use AI.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. I don't think that we're ready yet for a full AI experience. I don't think that the customer necessarily is ready for that yet. I also don't think that senior management inside the bank is probably ready for that yet. You know, you touch base on some of those larger loan requests. If we're being honest, the people who are running these large financial institutions, they're the two generations above us, right? So it's essentially your parents and your grandparents, right? If you're a guy who's my age, so. I don't know that they're necessarily ready for a full AI loan presentation in a committee. I think that that's going to go over like a lead balloon. So I think that it's probably going to take some time for full implementation. The other thing is that, you touched on how much this is going to cost. And there's some pros to it, certainly, because in theory, you could maybe incentivize a broker more if you don't have to pay a relationship manager, right? There's one less person at that table that needs to potentially eat. However, I think the implementation for a bank to actually get it to a scale where it's going to be a good process and experience for the customer, I think that is going to take a tremendous amount of money to facilitate. Realistically, I think it's only something that the big banks could play in at this time. We know who those players are. The $1 trillion type banks can probably afford that type of technology at this point. But, some of these smaller community banks just aren't really going to be able to keep up with that. And to be honest, they're still the banks that really rely on people like an Alan Peterson or Chris Hackney to go out and to find deals and to source deals, right? Because, if you're one of those big $1 trillion banks, most of the businesses, a lot of it's walking in the door to you. They still have loan officers who do a tremendous job in the market. There's no doubt about that. But, when you're on every single corner and everyone seems to having a checking account with you, a lot of that business is going to walk in off the street and you're not going to necessarily have to go out and source it. So they do have an advantage when it comes to potentially using something like AI. I personally had an experience recently where I refinanced my home. And when I did it through a company called Better Mortgage. And it was all online. I went onto an online portal. I put in how much money I was making. I put in how much my home was worth. They waived the appraisal. And, they actually closed in less than a month. And during the entire process, I think I talked to one person on the phone for about 10 minutes. Wow. Just like that, I was able to get my home refinanced. So I think it's a lot closer than we think it is. I think that even things like TurboTax, for example, are helping you file your taxes without you having to speak to somebody directly. And so I think that it could be right around the corner. And I think we think that maybe we're safe, but maybe we're not as safe as we think we are.
Yeah. And I'd be more focused on, I know this is the BDO show, but the underwriting component and AI's capabilities there. We also partnered with this company called Loomis. Hopefully we can get a paid ad out of this plug. But our bank, they're scoring our entire portfolio with their proprietary score. They give loss given defaults, probability of default, expected loss, down to the individual loan. Even like in specific states, what's your probability of default in Florida versus Ohio, right? In specific industry in Ohio versus Florida, how are you going to perform with this particular loan? It could even pull the entire history of the business from their websites and the owners, where that would take an underwriter maybe 20 minutes to do. They click a button and type in the name and it compiles all that data for them in like 5 pages of, the competitive analysis. So that's next for me. I think underwriting and the credit analyst role is going to be penetrated by AI, and then we're next, and hopefully we own a bank by then.
What are your thoughts, Alan?
I think that AI definitely has applications. I mean, as far as the use of proceeds, Chris, I think that's a great point. I think with at the end of the day, though, for the larger or more complicated requests, we really want to know our borrower. The example you used, Sterling, we know that you own a house in Tampa, Florida, right? That's good enough for a better mortgage. But as far as really understanding the borrower and knowing the deal, I still think that we're going to be ahead of the technology for a little bit longer. That's just my take on it. I mean, I think that the only thing that I see today, currently with AI, that bothers me is just probably LinkedIn posts that are so obviously AI generated for folks that, are just obviously copy and pasting from Chat GPT. It's a bad look. And I really think it's really obvious when you see it. I mean, do you guys disagree with that? When you see that, you're like, okay,
no,
somebody got the Chat GPT again.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I do have Chat GPT on my phone, and I got it like probably about 3 weeks ago. And to be honest, I keep trying to use it and I keep struggling with it. And it's just because whenever I have it prompt something for me, be it, questions or a paragraph or something like that, I try and play around with it to see what its capabilities are, but it just never sounds like me. It sounds like Chat GPT. It sounds like a computer. It sounds kind of cheesy. It sounds kind of corny. I have my own way of speaking.
That sauce is what you're saying.
It doesn't have that sauce. It's not going to beat Sterling Birdsong yet. That's for sure. Okay. I have a hard time.
Authenticity is what we're selling here. Like people like our style, or maybe, they like a different style more or whatever, but people should have that option. The Chat GPT, I just feel like it's very easy to see through it. And you see a lot of it, man. It's interesting that people don't clean that up a little bit more.
So, Chris, seriously, go ahead, Sterling.
I was going to say, I was actually going to bring it back to you because I wanted to get your thoughts on, we talk about from a credit standpoint, and I do agree. I think that it's easier to infiltrate the credit side first, right? Because, you can input data into AI and it can spit something out in seconds versus obviously, paying a underwriter, hours to write up a loan summary. But I was going to question, do you feel like a loan decision made by AI is, better or worse than a loan decision made by a human?
See, I think AI provides the analysis or what's the word I'm searching for? The recommendation, rather, and the human still makes a decision. So that's how it's going to work here at Bay First. We're using it on probably some of our smaller loans first. And it'll give you like, hey, here's what we think. Here's our estimated probability of loss given default. Here are the numbers for you humans to then make a decision, right? So I don't think and I don't foresee a future in where banks are making actual decisions totally on AI, but they're getting recommendations. What I do fear is that humans become lazy and too reliant upon, oh, this scored a 95 out of 100. This is a good loan. And you never talk to the borrower and the guy's like, doesn't have the best character, right? Or this loan scored a 75 and you don't realize like, oh, it's a growing business and there's a story there and it's a minority woman-owned business and, she's buying real estate and you miss out on those story-driven loans. That's my real concern. But I don't feel that AI will ever get to the point where, you're making the decision. AI is making the decision for us. Hopefully it's all just recommendations. Here are the scores. Here are the percentages. Here are the ratios. We're helping you make the decision, but the decision is still yours, human. Because at the end of the day, let's keep it honest. BDOs, we're here to take some of the blame, man. When a loan goes bad, I got to be able to say, John Smith, you put this $4 million loan on my books. I want all your commission back. I want your car. I want your house. You're terrible. You put this. If it's AI, right? I can't blame the AI chatbot or whatever because they put a $4 million loan on my books and can't say you messed this up.
And AI is not going to call your customer and guilt them.
Exactly. And say, hey, man, can you make the payment? What's going on? And really, there's no relationship there when a borrower does get in a bind and say, hey, what's going on? Can we give a deferment? Can we modify your loan? Can we modify your rate? What can we do to help you in this situation? You're then establishing a relationship after the fact, which we all know that's not the best way to go about anything.
Yeah, no, those are really good points, all of that. And, I've given this some thought as well. I think there are pros and cons to, AI making a credit decision. I think that, the thing about human beings is that human beings can be swayed, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you meet somebody and they have charisma, they can sometimes talk you into stuff that they got riz, you can talk them into stuff that they probably wouldn't do otherwise, right? The good thing with AI is that it, in theory, should be impartial, right? It should be able to look at the numbers for what they are, look at how much, the default rates have happened for this particular scenario in the past, and be able to give you the odds and the probability of, hey, this loan has a 3% chance of potentially going bad, right? And then you can kind of make the decision based on that. However, what AI can't do is it can't replace the feeling you get from when you talk to somebody who's a customer on the phone and you just know whether or not they're going to be a good fit. Like, I don't know about you guys, but, I've been doing this long enough to where if I'm speaking to a customer for more than, I don't know, call it a 20-minute conversation, I can usually tell whether or not that person has the capacity to be running a business. And so there's some people who are probably going to look fantastic on paper that when you actually have a conversation with them, you look them in the eye, and you kind of hear them explain themselves. Sometimes you might just leave that conversation thinking, you know what, this just isn't going to work. That person just doesn't quite have what it takes to probably make this a successful operation. And so I think that you are going to potentially miss out on that when you're doing something with AI versus when you're doing it with a human.
Yeah, I mean, as a BDO, the value that we add, and I know we're going to possibly talk about this later, you are the advocate for the borrower, right? You're the first line of defense. You're the one who's building that relationship. You're the one who knows if they understand their financials, the P&L, or the business they're buying, do they understand the financials, right? You've had those conversations. When you remove the human aspect of that and it's all AI driven, you don't have as much, I feel like, tangible data and connection points to really make a solid loan, because it's so important that that character and the 5 C's, and this isn't a credit class, but when you're in a rising interest rate environment, right, you look at what's happened over the past 18 months, it's the borrowers with that high C character that are still paying their loans, or that reached out to one of us and said, hey man, I'm struggling to pay this. What can we do on this rate? What can happen here? And if you don't know that C or that character, because it's an AI-driven loan, I question the strength of your portfolio, even with all the other predictive factors that you have from AI. Alan, what do you think as far as because I feel like you are one of the best when it comes to relationships, knowing your brokers, your borrowers, people absolutely love you, man. So what's your value add? What do you say to your borrowers, your brokers, as far as here's why you need to work with me, Alan Peterson? And let's say in the future is compared to AI, right? Right now you're saying that here's why I work with Alan Peterson instead of Chris or Sterling, right? But in the future, it's here's why you work with me instead of an AI chatbot. What do you say?
I think that the human touch is something that is going to be desired ongoing. I still think that there's a certain level of comfort that needs to be given to folks. I mean, last year, I did a ton of business acquisitions for first-time buyers. That's what I did last year, right? And I don't know that the first call is really anything other than a little bit of comfort that, hey, there's going to be a checklist coming out with 20 items, but I got your back on it. We're going to make it a little bit easier for you. I'm going to answer the silly questions that you have. And yeah, I mean, you can ask a chat bot, but there's a certain level of reassurance from dealing with a human being that I think that that's still a value that is going to be, setting us apart, at least in the immediate future. I mean, in the long term, I think it would be irresponsible to suggest AI could never do that. I mean, it's just, it's foolish. I just think that it's not as close as we think in regard to taking my job specifically. I think the value out of the human being touch of being able to say, listen, I've seen this before, and this is what we did, and this is how my credit officer prefers to see this. And if we structure it this way, I think we're going to be a lot better than if we, you get a good loan that you know inside and out, you can defend it, you can present it, and it'll perform well. I still just think that hand-holding, for lack of a better term, is something that the robots just can't do just yet.
Yeah, and the advisory aspect too of your buyer borrower advising them, hey, this is how we need to structure this loan. Here's what you need. The question you need to be asking of the seller. Here's what our credit team is going to ask you. I don't know if you guys ever have had this experience, but sometimes I've told buyers like, hey, I don't think this is the right fit for you. I think this business is overpriced. I don't think your experience aligns with this. I don't think these customers and these contracts are actually going to transfer over to you. I'm just the lender in the deal. I'm the BDO, but here are my thoughts, right? As an advisor in this transaction, you've got your attorney CPAs. It's in my interest and your interest for me to tell you how I really feel. And I don't know if AI could ever get to that point where they advise on all aspects of the deal, even if it's like a good deal to proceed with.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback on what Alan was saying as well, I think that there could be potential opportunity costs for banks in terms of, when you get that initial checklist from, call it the AI person who, sends it all out to you, it's going to look really daunting, right? If you're somebody who's not used to providing financial information, it's going to be like a 20 bullet point checklist, and you might just say, you know what, this isn't for me. You might just say, I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'm going to go hit up somebody that I know for a personal loan, or, I think your pull through rate could potentially be worse with AI because it kind of puts the onus on the customer, right? All of a sudden, there isn't anyone there to answer those little questions. There's no one there to reassure them, walk them through this, say, hey, trust me, I've done this a million times. I'm going to get you from point A to point B. So that is something that I think banks do have to think about is, how many people are going to see it and then just check out, and you'll just never hear from them again, and you'll never know that you never heard from them again. That's production that just gets lost.
Yeah. And I feel like now too, there's a lot of, there's a lot of BDOs out there, and I see, because we hire some from time to time that, they don't do the advising. They don't really know their deals.
Right.
They don't send the checklist out. They don't call on the borrowers. So it's like, what am I paying you all this money for, just to like get a name, phone number, and email and draft one term sheet document, and then the rest of it's like a nightmare and a pain for everyone in the transaction. And the borrower absolutely hates our bank at the end of it because you didn't advise, structure, provide any sort of guidance, like put them at ease at all. You might as well use AI. And I think those are the type of BDOs that absolutely, this is a controversial, I guess, clickbait comment for this one, like should be replaced by AI immediately.
I was just going to say that this almost ties into sort of what we were talking about on episode 1. And, part of my belief in the ability to continue to be an advisor, right? Not just an advocate or, a one-sided, but really to look at the whole picture, is I still believe in the telephone. I don't know that AI is going to be able to answer a phone call from a borrower at 10 at night who's confiding in you that their seller is using a business broker who's really a residential realtor who happens to work with the seller's wife, and the attorney involved is a family divorce attorney that lives in a cul-de-sac. Nobody's organized. Nobody's ready. How are we going to navigate through this? Now, if AI can hop on the telephone and do all of these things, I'm out of business, baby, and I'll let you know where I wind up. But until that happens, I like my odds, man. I'm just being honest.
So, general question here. Okay, so Alan versus a AI generated BDO. So the AI generated BDO never gets tired, right? It's potentially nonstop sourcing, right?
Okay, so where's the difference?
Hold on. It has the ability to retrieve and review data in seconds over the course of a year. Who's going to outproduce who?
Alan.
You got your money on Alan?
I got my money on Alan. I think you're going to get more top of funnel from the AI bot. You're going to get a ton of submissions, but your pull through rate is going to be so low especially right now, that Alan, even if his top of funnel is half of the AI bot, he's going to have a higher success rate, higher pull through, because he knows what's a viable deal at his shop. And you're going to have an 80-90% pull through rate, whereas that AI bot, it might be 20% if you're lucky, or 30% right now. So I'm taking Alan all day with Red Bull.
Yeah,
of course.
That's safe money.
Copious amounts of Red Bull.
I would actually agree. I would agree with that for most of the same reasons that you said, Chris. I think that, especially when it comes to SBA, massaging the deal is a real thing. Alan kind of touched on it earlier. And I've said this, to many people, but like the difference in a 25 million a year guy and a 50 million a year guy is how many of the 50-50 calls that you win. Because, we can all go out and we can find the production, but the real trick is getting your bank to say yes once you find the deal. And a lot of that comes down to, if I have the same deal that maybe another BDO has, maybe they don't know how to present it the right way. Maybe they don't know how to structure it the right way to even make it eligible in the first place. But, I know my credit box, and more than that, I know my people. Right. As far as the bank is concerned, and banking in general, at the end of the day, people can kind of get caught up in the X's and O's of it. They think it's just all numbers driven. But when you get down to it really at its rawest form, it's people lending money to people. Right. This is a people driven business. And that's something that I've always tried to keep in mind throughout my career is, hey, at the end of the day, it's a signature. Right. It's not a stamp from some robot. Right. It is somebody who's behind that pen, who decided that they read this credit memo and that they like this deal and they want to move forward. That's why, like you said, picking up the phone has always been one of my secrets, right? In terms of not necessarily outsourcing, getting the deal, but getting the deal approved, right? If I have a deal that's marginal, but I know that if this borrower gets on the phone with my credit team and my bank president, that they're going to show well and represent themselves really well. As soon as I, get some pushback from credit, I'm going to go ahead and schedule a phone call, right? Because we're all going to get on the line here, and we're all going to talk to this borrower. We're all going to hear a story. And guess what? Once you talk to him and he's a real person and not numbers on a piece of paper, it's a lot harder to say no, isn't it? Right? Because you know them at that point.
And I just can't imagine a world of a $4 or $5 million loan where there's not one single phone conversation and it's all AI driven, right? That's insane to even think about that, to lend $5 million of capital to someone you never saw on at least a virtual screen, or you at least had a conversation, where do your kids go to school? Where'd you go to school? What do you do outside of this? I hope we never get there. I hope we get some of the efficiencies of AI, but I hope we don't lose our touch and our relationships that we build in SBA. Mortgage, it went the path of AI, like you mentioned, Sterling, because you've got collateral and you probably don't need that. The home is there. You live in it. I don't need to have a conversation. When you're living in that home, and I'm assuming you're going to make that payment, right? Because that's where you live. A business is totally different. There's macroeconomic factors, things that can happen. So you need to have a relationship with that person. What do we feel about, I'm big on like lending to underserved, right? What do you feel about discrimination and bias? And, a lot of people think if things are automated, you're going to have certain people that get precluded from financing. What are your thoughts on that, Alan? And Sterling, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I was giving this some thought, right? And, in theory, yes, AI should be completely impartial. But I was kind of wondering if over time, if AI would just essentially develop its own biases, right? I mean, it is artificial intelligence, right? It is smart enough to essentially think for itself, and it gets better every day. It develops, and it's continuously fed data. Right. So, over time, would it not just eventually become biased, and not necessarily based on, color or race or anything to that way, but maybe certain census tracts or certain levels of income and, things of that nature. I think it would only be natural that over time it would start to develop its own opinions on essentially who is a good customer and who is a bad customer. What are your thoughts on that, Alan?
You really nailed it, Sterling. I think that's the concern, is that if deals are going bad in my hometown of northeastern Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, coal country, they need an advocate for the good deals that are coming through there. I think a lot of things are not as simple as binary, right? I think that's the one thing that we'll have to keep an eye on with AI. And I think there's also likely ways that you can utilize AI to speak in your voice, right? We know that ChatGPT, you can say things like, give me a 20-second script about the importance of a good business plan with the audience of a small business owner. You can say that and it'll do those things. I think that when you're going to try to incorporate technology and the words prudent lending, which is giving me flashbacks to credit committee. The fact is,
they have that at the internet.
No, not at the. No, I'm joking. It's one of those things though, where what is the spirit of the bank? What is the spirit of the program? And do we make sure that always supersedes any sort of potential biases to tech based on, region or other factors, but that's definitely a risk that I think that needs to be addressed.
And I'm Black, and I could say this, right? What if you have this AI and they're like, okay, all deals with guarantors of post-closing liquidity of 10% and credit scores of this are the deals to make. And then that ends up being a, white male in their mid 40s or 50s, right? And I'm just throwing out an arbitrary kind of hypothetical example there. And you end up excluding certain races and certain genders because, as a bank, you're like, I want the best credit risk. Give me the scores, give me the probability of defaults. And that you develop this box to Sterling's point where they've got these data sets. And then it ends up being, well, gosh, I've just lent to a bunch of chief credit officers, right? Like you want to have a mix. I'm not saying that other people can't be chief credit officers, but what I'm trying to say is there is a danger with AI being too involved in credit decisioning and providing too many data points to the credit decisioning team because you could develop your ideal borrower and then preclude and overlook a lot of people who are typically underserved with SBA capital. The good thing is SBA tracks all that data if you disclose information. So you'd be able to monitor that. And then maybe AI could build in some tools there, whereas you could have your ratios. Are you lending to, Latin Americans, African Americans? You could track that a little bit better too, I would assume, with some AI capabilities. There's got to be tools out there for that.
I think region is definitely a big one too. Like Alan said, I have snow 5 months out of the year up here. So are you going to suggest an outdoor water park that is going to be shut down? It's like, we know weather patterns and we know how they change. And that's a human touch aspect of it as well, that you can, they can drive alone. It can kill it. It can be great or it won't.
There was a Snowcat Ridge in Orlando. I passed on that deal and now it's wide open and doing well. It's an outdoor ski slope snow park in Orlando. I said,
there's one in Tampa as well.
It's Florida. That's
but
silly.
You can make fake snow and keep it going, but you can't make fake summer in upstate New York.
Floridians only like to go to the beach and eat Cuban sandwiches. I didn't think they would want to go to outdoor ski parks, but that's where AI could have helped me.
That's good. Topics like this are why these conversations just are the best. They're the best in the entire world, and we're looking for more topics just like this. Again, you guys today, awesome conversation. Thanks for everybody for giving their perspective on AI and what it could possibly do to our industry. But again, huge thank you to everybody who listened in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Again, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share with others. And we would love to hear from you. So take a few minutes, submit your questions, send them right over to the BDO Show at gmail.com. And we will get to those topics. We will pour through all of the emails that we're getting from everybody, and hopefully that we can discuss them next week or the week after. Again, thank you for being with us. Till next time.